person, you just maybe one day you want to confront these goats, and then you see a stone on the ground, right? And the stone looks perfect for the job. You pick up the stone and you hurl it at the goats in an attempt to chase them away from your compound. Now, the stone, pardon me, the stone has been around for quite a while, probably months, and you have never noticed. It never even crossed your mind that something was there. It has probably been laying there for a long time, right? But at the time when there was a need to be met, the stone was in the best position to meet that need. And at that time, the stone became more meaningful than even your phone in that context. Now, your phone that you prize as something that is, very valuable or invaluable, as you may want to put it, did not have as much meaning as the stone in that moment. So my point is that a thing or a person has meaning to the degree of the purpose that it serves. I'll give another illustration before I move on. So I don't know if you're familiar with the ages, the evolutionary ages, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Age of Classical Antiquity, the Middle Age, and the Modern Age. I was watching a video sometime about it, and something piqued my interest. You see, the reason why we classify those things into ages and we have a name for them, and that is the earlier ages, that's the Stone, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. It wasn't because uh, that that thing or that item, as it were, came into existence at that age. What it meant is that item found its purpose at that age, and that purpose was found because a need arose, and that item was able to meet the need. So I'll just tell you, just briefly say a few things. So concerning the Iron Age, because I love the Iron Age so much, because it was where the Bronze Age was declining, and because our earlier, if you in the evolutionary sense rather, our ancestors were wanderers, were nomadic people, right? So they were wandering about. So the time when the Bronze Age was declining and the Iron Age was about to begin was when man now decided that they didn't want to be wanderers anymore. They needed to settle. So they wanted a settlement, and that would mean that they will require something to sustain them. So there was a need for agriculture, right? And that was when, in the search for a solution to this problem, iron became of use. Now, iron had been existing in the Stone Age, iron had been existing in the Bronze Age, but it's only found meaning in the Iron Age because it met a need. So men were able to use iron to, make weapons for protection, to make tools like the shovel, the hoe, the axe, the diggers for agricultural use. So I am saying all this to just give credence to the fact that the meaning of a thing is found in its purpose, and the purpose of a thing is a function of the service that it provides. So I need you to follow me here because I'm trying to just lay my thoughts so that you can see where I'm coming from before I just jump into what it means to serve and how to serve and all of that. So if the meaning of a thing is in the purpose that it serves, and the purpose of a thing is in the need that it meets, it ultimately means that the meaning of a thing or the meaning of any person or what gives meaning to anything, any item, any person, any people, any group of people, any community is deeply embedded in a need that is met. It's deeply embedded in service. So your meaning, because a lot of people struggle with the concept of purpose. Oh, how can I fulfill purpose? What was my purpose and all of that? I tell you that purpose is defined by service, and service here is meeting a need. And I'm going to explain why as I go along. So I just need to follow me. Now, the second point I want to lay out is greatness is not fame. Now, I know that the average person, if you ask them, oh, you want to be great, you want to achieve a lot, you have aspirations, you want to be known, you want fame. The idea is greatness is not defined by fame. Now, I'm not saying that we should not aspire to be famous, to be known, to be widely accepted and known, right? I'm saying that fame is a very weak metric to define greatness and success. And I'll tell you why. Because fame is just being known, right? Fame is being known. Let me use being known for simplicity's sake, right? Now, I hope you know that there are people who are infamous, they are known, right? But for the wrong things. Doesn't necessarily mean they are successful. Now, if you are, well, in Nigeria, where I am, right, there's been a trend in a couple of weeks where when they catch thieves, they dance, right? So it's a trend now, right? So now those guys, they dance, they take a video of them or they record them and post it on social media. Now, for one reason or the other, we can say yes, they are famous because now they are widely known, at least in the context of the cultural sense, they are widely known. But that doesn't mean that they are great people. I hope you see my point. It doesn't mean that they are successful. So someone can be infamous, doesn't mean they are successful. So that's why I'm saying fame is a very weak metric upon which we measure greatness. Now, my definition of success or greatness is a measure of influence, which means how much sway you hold over the minds of people. And that influence is also a measure of impact. And impact is directly tied to how much needs you are meeting. So your impact is tied to value, quite all right. But your value is in what need you are meeting and to what degree you are meeting that need. So I'm saying this to say that even greatness that we all want is tied to service. Just think about that for a minute. So we've said that the meaning of a thing, which means the purpose that a thing serves, is tied to service. And even the greatness, the fame, the influence that we all desire is also tied to meeting a need. And that is very powerful, right? Now, if you think about the illustrations I used earlier, the stone and the iron I talked about, you see that they only began to find relevance when they began to meet a need. They had been there all this while, but their relevance did not start until they began to serve, until they began to meet a need. Follow me, I'm going somewhere. So we are seeing that most of the things that we desire are invariably, directly or indirectly, tied to service. Now, let me give you another illustration. There is virtually nobody here that doesn't know Coca Cola. Now, if I ask any random person on this call, who is the founder of Coca Cola, you probably do not know, right? I can bet my left kidney that you probably don't know the owner of Coca Cola, right? The founder of Coca Cola, right? But Coca Cola is a widely known beverage all over the world. And the reason why that relevance is so is because it is meeting a need. So Coca-Cola as a beverage is a is an item that quenches thirst and gives you this, adds flavor to whatever you are consuming. So you are doing two things at the same time. You are quenching your thirst and you are having an enjoyable experience. So that is a need that is being met. Until the kingdom comes, Coca-Cola will continue being relevant because it is a need that has to be met by everyone. So my point is that instead of chasing relevance, you chase service because service is meeting a need. So the moment you begin to meet a need, you become valuable. And the degree of the need that you meet also determines the degree of value that you will have. Now, very quickly, the fourth point or the third point I want to lay out is that service is not slavery. Now, this is a very I've noticed because my dear friend Marvel said I'm a podcaster and I do public speaking as well, and so it means I interact with people on different levels and at different skills, right? Uh, and one thing I have noticed is whenever I talk about the concept of service, a lot of people their mind is cast to they want to use me or they want to take advantage of me, and that is the wrong mindset. Now, service is not slavery. Slavery has to do with doing work involuntarily, as we know, like we don't even need to, go on and on about what slavery is. Meeting, or how do I put it? Doing work involuntarily. So you are being forced to accomplish a task. But service, I define service as meeting a need. So there are two different things. And the reason, and I found out that one of the reasons why the act of service is declining in our day and age is because we think service is slavery. We think service means you are being taken advantage of. But that is a wrong mindset. You need to begin to see service as meeting a need. That is how you're offering service. And as we go on, I'm going to try to elucidate on that and see how I can convince you because like I said earlier, I'm only sharing my perspective, right? So with all that being said, it is important that we have a change of mindset. Our mindset needs to be changed, right? To begin to see service as something that is inevitable to success. And that is the reason why I laid down the preamble before I'm getting to the meat of the matter. You need to understand that the back end of greatness, of relevance, of success is in meeting a need. And I don't need you to, don't take my word for it. I don't even want you to take my word for it, right? I need you to just do your own research. Look for the top 10 people who are relevant, who you consider as relevant in today's world, and as well as relevant in your own life, right? And then do the math. And you will see that at the core of their relevance, the reason why they hold that sway, that much sway in your life, the reason why they have that much impact to your life is because they are meeting a need that you have. So, what you regard as influence, service, greatness, success is invariably tied to meeting a need, to service. Now, I'm a Christian, right? So I can't do without talking about Christian stuff, right? So I read my Bible, right? And one of the things that really touched me was when Jesus was talking to the disciples and he said that the one who will be the greatest must first be a servant. And that revolutionized my thinking because before now I have thought that greatness means when you have people at your beck and call, when you are able to exert authority and power over people, right? But Jesus brings a new perspective and he says the one who will be the greatest must first serve. And then when I bring it in light of what I have seen, what I have heard, the knowledge and experience I have, I see that what he's talking about there is meeting a need. So it means that the moment you begin to see the need to meet a need, right? Success is invariable. So the way I see success, greatness, influence, and all the likes, they are like an addendum. So the idea is to get people who focus on service, not necessarily on titles, right? I before this call came in, or before I joined this call, I was just going through my WhatsApp statuses and I happened to see one of Marvel's posts, at least the last post he made, right? And I was talking about how leadership should not be defined, it should not be defined by titles, right? But should be defined by function. So you can't really call yourself a leader if all you are concerned about is just to be there, to have the fame, to have the title. Because the core of leadership is in the need you are meeting. The reason why people will listen to you, the reason why people will place value on you is because you are meeting a need that they have. Never forget that. Now, I hope we know that they say money follows value. So let me give this illustration again to just drive home my point. Now, you are a very successful businessman. You have let's say it's 9 figures in your account, for instance. You have a very beautiful family and you have loads of cars. Now, one day the car develops a fault, right? Now, with all your experience, your wealth, and everything, you are not able to repair the damage to that car, right? You would have to call a mechanic, an automobile mechanic, to come and rectify that issue. Now, the reason why you call him and even pay him is because he is meeting a need that you can otherwise not meet. I hope we're getting the concept here. So the reason why in that context your mechanic is more valuable to you, right, than even you yourself is because your mechanic he knows he's meeting a need. There's a need on ground that he is able to meet. So what you are paying for is value. So the reason why you give your mechanic the money after he has done his job and all of that is because you are paying for value, and that value is in service. So he is meeting a need. So we see that, and like I have said, anything you pay for, whether you pay money for or you pay attention to, is because that thing is of value to you and because that thing meets a need. So I'm trying to just let you see that the core of anything worthwhile is based on service, is predicated on service. So because I'm looking at my time, I'll just quickly go to I've been speaking for about 17 minutes now, and then you begin to wonder and say, this Shola guy, okay, we have heard you now. Yeah, service is everything, service is everything, and say, okay, we have heard. But how do I serve? So what is the idea behind this service? How do I appropriate service in my journey of life as I try to climb up the ladder of life and attain the success that I want and the status and influence that I desire? So I'm just going to give us 3 points to round off, and then perhaps other points will also come out when we start the question and answer session, right? So the first thing I want you to know is when it comes to service, you must see problems as opportunities. Now, this is a game changer, trust me. It's a game changer. And it has to do with your mindset. You see, you cannot I was reading a book recently. Title of the book is Cash Flow Quadrants by Robert Kiyosaki. right? And there he talked about, it is a financial literacy book. So he talked about how to make wealth, how to increase your finances and all of that. And he said something very profound. He said there is a formula to this. He said it is be, do, have. Now, a lot of people focus on having, but you don't realize that in order to have, you need to take some actions, which is doing. But those actions have to be predicated on a particular thought process, which is being. So it means that trying to elicit an action without a concomitant mindset is not sustainable. So it means that if you want to, try out this concept to call service and give yourself to service and all of that, you have to train your mind. You have to begin to see things differently than the average man. Now, many people who have, made worthwhile things in this world, many people that we respect in both the secular and whatever sphere of life that you would want to even talk about. There are people who have seen problems as opportunities and taking advantage of them. Now, there is a man I follow and I love so much, Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he said something. He said that there is little difference. There is not much difference between problems and opportunities, really, because if there is a problem and you find a solution to the problem, you have solved the problem, and you get rewarded for the opportunity that you utilize, the problem that you have solved. So I think that it's a game changer for you to begin to see issues, problems, setbacks in a different light. So when you see something that poses a problem, you don't run away from it. So let me quickly tell you a story about Coca-Cola, right? And how Coca-Cola became a widely known brand, right? So in I think the mid 80s, 1800s rather, in the mid 1800s, the founder of Coca-Cola, I can't remember his name now. So he founded, he did one, he did something, and he called it Coca-Cola and started selling it, and people took a liking to it and started to, buy it and all of that. And then at the time, Coca-Cola was sold as a fountain drink. So it was a drink. It wasn't in bottles as you see today. It was first in a fountain. So it's like going to a bar and asking the bartender for a drink, a shot or something. That was how they took Coca-Cola at that time. So, and it was doing pretty well, right? People were enjoying it. And then two people came around and said, let's do it in such a way that these people can have this product to take home to their houses as well. So they decided to bottle it, to put this in a bottle. But the thing was, at the time, the sophistication of the world had not gotten to the point where we could make, things, durable things like that. So when they started bottling Coca-Cola, it was causing a lot of health issues. People were falling sick because the preservative method of the bottle wasn't adequate enough to keep the Coca-Cola edible and useful to the body. So people began to fall sick, and it became a major issue because sales dropped. And then that posed the problem, right? And then they said we can revert to selling it as a fountain drink when everything was going well. But they said, okay, no, this is an opportunity to be innovative. And so they said, okay, let's work on a cork. So they developed a bottle cap. That solved the problem. Now, as time went on, people saw Coca-Cola as a very lucrative business, and they began to do same. So people began to produce their own versions of cola and began to sell it, and began to mimic the bottles of Coca-Cola. So people kept consuming Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola sales kept dropping because there were other varieties in town. And so it came to their notice, and they thought about it. That was a problem again. And then the owner said, this is an opportunity for us to have our own branded bottle. And so they made a customized bottle for Coca-Cola. And then sales went back up, right? And then came the early 1900s when the war began, right? And put in mind that the sales of Coca-Cola was just within the United States. So when the war came and then they had to send troops to the front line, they needed supplies for them, right? And so one of the things that they wanted to give them was something that could, give them energy in a very little time. So they were going to supply them with a lot of sugar. So they told Coca-Cola, the government of the day then told the Coca-Cola company that they were going to have to cut on their production rates because they have to send sugar to the people on the front lines. And for the making of Coca-Cola, they needed a lot of sugar. And so that was a problem. But then they thought about it again and said, how can we use this as an opportunity? And then they said, okay, rather than cut our supply and take sugar to the front lines, why can't we just take Coca-Cola to the front lines, right? And then the government bought the idea and began to export it. Well, not necessarily export, supply to the front lines. And then they welcomed it. It was a very nice beverage, gave you that thrilling taste, and also supplied you with energy in a short burst of time. So it was widely accepted. And because the soldiers were on the front lines in different nations, and they were allies. So that was a way to introduce Coca-Cola to other troops of other nations. And so when the war ended, the First and Second World War, and people go back to their place, they began to look. There was this beverage that we got when we were at war. It's a very nice beverage. And then they contacted the United States and then contacted Coca-Cola, and that was when Coca-Cola now decided to widely distribute Coca-Cola across the world, and that's why you have it in almost any nation in the world now. My point is that every time there was a roadblock, every time there was a problem, Coca-Cola saw it as an opportunity to evolve. So it wasn't necessarily about the decisions that they were making. It was the mindset that the company as a whole had. So that's my point. That if you begin to see problems as opportunities, right, it's the first step to actively appropriating service. And you can start with your immediate environment. It doesn't have to be something big, right? I am a fan of starting small and scaling up, right? So it doesn't have to be that you get to a very huge platform before you begin to do this. You can just around your house look for problems. Okay, this is an issue. Oh, the gutter is blocked, or this, and begin to look for ways that problem can become an opportunity. How you can remember we're talking about meeting a need, and so that is the first step. If you take this and you apply this, it's going to change your life. I promise you, rather. Now, the second point I'm going to make is to volunteer. Now, this is actually like what Mother was saying before I started my talk. You see, we need to ensure that as a generation, we are not incentive driven, we are service driven. And I say this with all humility, and I don't even mean to say that there should be no, reward for service provided. But I'm saying that the mindset behind service should not be incentive driven, because a lot of times, a lot of people don't want to do something. So a lot of people know there is a need to be met, and they even know how to meet the need even, but they are not able to do so because, or they won't do so because there is no incentive, and in like more popularly financial incentive. So a lot of people would not want to serve unless there's some form of reward system for them in terms of finances. And that's a huge pandemic, especially in our world, because we live in a world now that has pressured us to, make money as fast as you can. We have social media is really an instrument for piling up pressure in the minds of young people. So a lot of people just want to skip that part of, oh, no, 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 I'm not doing anything for free, right? I just want to do things that get the money, get the money, get the money, get the money. But I put it to you that it might sound controversial, but hear me out. There are certain incentives that you will get from volunteering that will yield more financial income than you would have gotten if you were financially compensated for that act or for that service. Now, there are things like relationships that you can build from service, things like connection, like referrals. I've seen someone who did a work for a particular person, and he did the work so well. He was very excellent at his job, right? And the person thought to compensate, and he just felt, oh, no, 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 I'm doing this for free. I'm not really looking for monetary reward. I just saw that there was a problem and I fixed it. And the guy was so impressed that he had to call his company overseas, like, oh, I found a guy that can do this. And say, oh, we're having that same problem here. And then that was the way he was taken to the other side, to further in his career and all of that. So I'm just saying this to say, and I must say here because there has to be a balance. I'm not saying that you must do everything for free, especially if the need you are meeting is directly linked to your livelihood. So I'm not saying you should, go about doing free things. I'm just saying that we have lost the culture of volunteering in our community, and that has, made us to now be incentive driven and not service driven. And if you realize what I have said so far, I've built on the foundation that at the core of anything good, anything great, anything useful in life is service, meeting a need, and that should be done without any incentive mindset. Because once you are incentive driven, your quality of work will definitely reduce, and that's why we have a lot of people doing very shabby jobs out there, right? So I'm not saying this to sway anyone to say, okay, now start doing things for free, like I've earlier stated, but I'm just saying that we need to bring back the culture of volunteering. If you see a need that needs to be met, that you have the capacity to meet, right, and the way without to, you should do it without expecting any monetary incentive, right? Now, if that comes, fine. I'm telling you that there are more rewards for volunteering that money cannot buy. There are certain connections that you will get, there are certain relationships that you will have, there are certain referrals that you will get that money will not be able to buy. So I just think that it's something worth considering for us to bring back that culture of volunteering. And the last thing I want to talk about before I, wrap up is to use your talent. Now, like I always say, everybody has a talent. Evolution has made it so that the the rate of distribution of our genetic predispositions, if I may put it that way, has made it so that everyone has one form of genetic edge or advantage that puts them on a higher pedestal than the average person. Now, when you find that is your talent, now people say, "Oh, I don't have talent. I don't have talent. I don't have time to delve into that." That's a whole discussion because a lot of people regard talent as a performative activities, but talent is a whole lot more than that, right? But we're not going into that. I'm saying that once you have found your talent, using your talent is one of the ways to meet a need. Using your talent is one of the ways to meet a need. Now, the illustration that comes to mind is that of Martin Luther King Jr. Right? I was watching his speech on "I Have a Dream" a few nights ago, and I was having goosebumps. That guy can speak. That guy is an orator. He can rile you up to tell your last card, to be very honest. And because at the time there was discrimination of the blacks and slavery and enslavement, so there was a need for the emancipation of these people, this set of people. And Martin Luther King used his talents to render a service that will go down in history as one of the greatest accomplishments of the United States and even all around the world. Right now, I didn't when I grew up, I wasn't born in the era when Martin Luther King was alive, right? But his legacy has been so immortalized that in the sands of time that generation after generation we keep talking about it. And for me, that is what I define as greatness. Leaving a legacy that outlives you. That's what I define as greatness. And there is no better way to leave a legacy that outlives you if you are not service driven. So another illustration is Florence. Oh, my time is up now, so I'll just round off. So another illustration is Florence Nightingale, right? Who used her talents and her skills to, immortalize herself as well. So I'm saying that true greatness is deeply embedded in service, and more than meeting your needs in time, we must also think beyond that, leaving a legacy that outlives us. And that has been one of my driving force as a person. And that is why there is a desire for me to be better because I want to leave a legacy that outlives people. So as I wrap it up, right, because I'm wrapping it up now, I just want you to, like I said earlier, I'm not here to say that every other metric for success or every other route to success are not right. So the determination, the diligence, the hard work, right? I'm not saying that they are not important, and I am not in any way devaluating them, right? I'm only trying to bring a perspective, and a perspective that I think is fundamental, because at the core of all of this is service. You must be able to become a person who meets a need, and in fact does that with little or no, incentive drive. If you can get to that point, right, then your liberation has just started, to be honest. So I just hope that with this little sharing of my perspective that I've done, I hope that even if I've not been able to convince everybody, right, I hope I've been able to at least spark some form of curiosity, some form of reflection for us to go and build upon as we all strive to become better and better. Because honestly, we all want to be better people. We all want to achieve our goals, achieve our aspirations. I'm saying, yes, go hard or go home. But what if there is a better way and a more fundamental way that is ever sure to produce results? So go hard, go serve, or go home. So the way to go hard or go home is to go serve. Basically, that's the way I see it. So once again, I want to thank Mr. Marvel for giving me this opportunity to just share my thoughts on this topic, and I hope I've been able to at least rouse you a little bit to go think on these things as we go. So thank you so much. The service you are rendering or the needs that you are meeting, I'm saying, what does it mean to you? Do you think that people are taking advantage of you, or do you think you are meeting a need? Now, I know that there is a thin line between service and slavery, and I'm also big on respect, and I believe that respect is, reciprocal. So that being said, I think that it's up to you to pick up on the vibe of the people whose need you are meeting, and ensure that you are assertive enough to know when to back off. Because truth be told, there are people who will take advantage of your, your good mind, your good will. And I've seen that happen a lot of times to myself. In fact, I have a plethora of examples to give in that regard. But I'm saying that the concept of what I'm saying, or the idea that I'm trying to pass across, is that we should not see our rendering of service as slavery, even if some people might want to consider it that. But I'm saying that whenever you begin to sense that people are beginning to take advantage of you, right? I think it's wisdom to step back, because that way you are not even really making impact, you are just being used. The idea I'm trying to correct is the one that you think that what you are doing is that you are being enslaved. It's a different ball game to when you are actually being enslaved. So I want us to just get that the dichotomy between both concepts. But you don't have to say, because I've said, oh, meet a need, then you go where you are disrespected. Because even Jesus said that, the prophet is not without honor, like, except in his own country. And Jesus even told his disciples that when you go out to preach, wherever you get to, and people disrespect you, he says, leave, dust your slippers and leave. I'm sorry, I'm using, well, I'm not sorry, Shabo. I'm using a lot of biblical references because of my predisposition. But that's just to drive home the point that you must see your action as meeting a need. That's if there is a need. But at the same time, I think there's the balance. At the same time, you must be cognizant of the reception you get. So if you see that you are in a place where you are being disrespected or taken for granted, then it means your service is not needed there. So I hope I've been able to say something in that light.
All right, thank you so much, Ola, for your wisdom, really, in bringing these things to light. So once again, if you've got questions, please bring them up. We have like 6 more minutes to take questions. And we're really hoping that we could get into a bit of more details around a few things. But I wanted to quickly share something, and then I'll throw a question to Shola. I was speaking with someone pretty older, a couple of months ago, like I was going to say initially. But now, so she asked the staffs that works for her and said that, tell me your goal for the year. And when they all bring the goal for the year to her, none of them had anything concerning the business that they were working for as a goal for the year. Nothing they want to improve in that particular business at some point and all of that. And she got mad. She got pretty pissed and was like, you think you're serving? There is no serving if you she's paying them, all right? She's paying them. Some of them are internal of her. But she got really mad and she got really pissed on her that you think you're serving, you guys are not really serving, because if I'm not, or if this business is not in your plan on how to get better, then I'm not really sure that you guys are really serving. Because if you're really serving, then the service should show in what your plan is, should show in your plans and all of that. With this kind of scenario, what would a Shola say to the person that had their goals written down, and the brand that they're working for isn't in it? What do you think? What would be your advice? I think maybe to both parties, because I know I've got a few people here that are also not just serving people, because as they are leading people, they are also serving. What would be your advice to both parties, Shola?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I was listening to a podcast I think last week, that was also touching on something related to that. And I personally think that the root cause is multifaceted. There is there are internal causes, so self-drive and all of that. And there are also external causes as well. Because if you look at, for instance, taking the situation of the country, for instance, right? The way things are, everybody's trying to just make ends meet. Everybody's fagged out, doing a couple of things at the same time to just, make ends meet. That could be a driver to just coming to work and giving your barest minimum, and you're just in a company because you want to get a paycheck, not because you are really concerned about the legacy that the company is wants to put down, or the vision of the company. So I think that in order to tackle something like that, and like your question asks, what am I going to say to the leader? For first to the leader, I'm going to say that number one, the reason for this is multifaceted, right? And she's right to be pissed, right? It's valid because she started that franchise with a particular vision, and ideally, you should, work towards, you know, actualizing that vision. So when you are leading a group of people who don't share the same vision with you, it can be really frustrating, and it can really hamper the growth of the franchise or the idea you're trying to sell. So I think for the leader, she should understand that, well, while she has a right to be angry, uh, she should also look at it from their own perspective. And the first question she should ask is, what is their drive? Because it is their drive that determines what their goals are. So a lot of people are, coming from a place where there's a lot of pressure on them to, provide, and they have to do all it takes. So they're not really giving their all to any organization that they work in, to be very fair. And no amount of shouting is going to, do that, to change that rather. So I think that she should understand that, one, the issue can be multifaceted. And then two, she should try to communicate more clearly, in clearer terms, the vision of the company, for instance. And she must be able to uh, do that compassionately, because number one, it's her own idea, it's not their idea. She's trying to pitch her idea to people that will help her in that idea. So she has to make sure that she does it with a lot of grace, right? So sometimes the reason why people don't really pitch into your ideas is because they don't even know where you're going to. They just show up at work, right? So I think what will help is for her to really sit down and, sit them down and explain what the purpose of the business is, and tell them what she really desires. And she also has to become a leader, not a boss. And we don't have time to delve into the differences between that. So she has to be a leader, not a boss. Many people are bosses, not leaders. And if you're a boss, you really cannot get so much out of people you're working with. So because of time, for the people that are working, so the workers, right? One thing I would say to them is that is what I have said so far, right? So that everything has to be service driven, and for most people, it's not that they don't want to do this; is that they don't have the knowledge of it. So sometimes orientation can also help people change their perspectives to how they see these things. To let them know that if you work in this way, you're not going to be hampering your growth or yourself. You're just going to be doing things in a better way. So I'm looking at the time, so I'll just stop there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've got a question. We've got a question by JJ. JJ said that at what point will I come to know? At what point will you come to when you will come to standpoint of I should serve, and what should be the drive? How do you get to know where to serve him? Should it just be, oh, because I want to serve, let me go into anything I see, or it should be purpose based as well? So I think it's a bit of back and forth question, but I'm sure Shala could do justice to that. Thank you, Shala.
All right, so I'll start from the second question. I think the first question is talking about what the drive should be, and
Yeah.
the second question is talking about whether your service should be related to your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, I'll start from the second question. I think that uh, whatever you do, let me start from here. I think that purpose is not found; purpose is built. And because a lot of people thrive on, saying that you want to uh, find purpose before you start. And I think that is a very erroneous way to go through life, because I think that the fact that whether or not you fulfill purpose is a retrospective diagnosis. So it's something you know in retrospect. So I think that the best way to go about it is whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. Now, Martin Luther King did not know that his purpose was to, emancipate people from slavery. He just did what he had to do with what he had, right? So if you are looking for, and I'm talking for someone that is trying to look for purpose, right? I think you should just look for where you can serve and start from there. Purpose becomes clearer as you go. You don't have to know everything yet on the spot. Purpose becomes clearer as you go. So, as regards purpose, you should ensure just make sure that you are doing something that you know is worthwhile, right? Something that you truly believe in, and just build from there. If it doesn't work out, you can try something else. If it works out, you can keep building as well. But if you already have your purpose, then fair enough. Make sure that your service is tailored to your purpose. And in fact, once you tailor your service to your purpose, it becomes easier to serve without all those inclinations that can debar you from achieving what you want. Now, concerning drive, what should drive you to serve? Right? I don't know what drives you, but I believe so much in the fact that we can raise better people. We can raise people with better minds, who think more clearly, who can, transform their community and transform their lives first, and then transform their environment. So that is what drives me. So as regards drive, I don't think it's something that can be dictated to you. I think it's something that you have to sit with yourself and reflect, ask yourself questions to really know what drives you. Now, I think that as a yardstick, right, what should drive you should be what your purpose is, what you desire, right? And that can be very dicey because a lot of people desire some very strange things, right? But I think your drive is something that you find by yourself, right? You sit down with yourself and ask yourself, what do you really want? And everything should, of course, be legit and be geared towards making yourself better and making your environment better. I think if that is your drive, then you are good to go.
All
I
right,
think that's
Salah.
how I can answer the question.
Thank you so much, Salah, for your time. All right, we're rounding up now. Initiate Fellowship for July has been a success, and I want to say thank you to everyone who's coming to the success. Like I told you before, there is a link right in your the chat box right now. You're going to get a mail immediately after now where you could read Shola's speaking session and everything that we've done. Please find Shola. I put his IG on the chat box to find him. If you've got more questions, go for him.